Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and healing from narcissistic relationships and figuring them out. I think one of the big problems in these relationships is that you and the narcissistic person are actually living in two different worlds. Now it doesn't seem likely that that would happen, right? You're sitting right next to me, we're having a different experience. Yep. And why is that? Well, it has a lot to do with what are likely your two very different personalities. People who tend to be in longer-term narcissistic relationships are often more agreeable. You almost have to be to have the patience, empathy, willingness to give second chances that agreeableness is about. And the only way a narcissistic relationship like this could endure is that somebody's willing to put up with the other person's BS. A person who may be less agreeable will be less amenable to the narcissistic nonsense, and then it's going to escalate and get problematic really fast. People who are agreeable and people who are antagonistic, which is the antagonistic belongs, narcissism lives in there, have very different experiences in the world. An agreeable person may be warm with people that they meet. They may be willing to wait in a long line with more patience, be willing to help someone with a problem, be more humble. People who are antagonistic or narcissistic are more likely to be entitled, angry, suspicious, impatient, not helpful, very unempathic, and arrogant. So if there was a sort of simulator where an agreeable person and a narcissistic person got to experience the exact same day, the same lines in the store, the same stressors, the same good things, the same bad things, all day their responses would be very different. And as a result, they would have very different recollections of the day. Now, agreeable people aren't Pollyannas. They will be willing to acknowledge if a day was difficult or problematic. And also remember, agreeableness is almost the opposite of antagonistic. They're sort of counterweights to each other. But these differences mean that at the end of the day, that you and the narcissistic person share together, there's a decent chance that they will say, oh my God, what a day. I do not need to do that day again. What a mess. Remind me to never go to that place again. You may have the recollection of a day that was actually nice. You might have thought, I thought that was a decent meal. You saw some friends, and sure, there was a long wait, but it was a fun place to people watch, and there was a nice place to sit while you waited. And this difference is often driven by not only the interpretive differences, but also how different personalities pull out different pieces of the day. And if you made the mistake of turning to the narcissistic person who was commenting on what a bad day it was and say, that's interesting to hear. I actually had a nice day. You won't get to keep talking because they're going to shut it down then and there. For a narcissistic person, a day when they may have had to wait or didn't get treated as they felt they were entitled to can crush a day. Finding joy is not a narcissistic person's strength. But for an agreeable person, they may look at the day as, hey, once the line kind of came down and we waited for our spot in line to come through, and everyone had to wait in line, so it's not like it was unfair, the agreeable person would say, we got a really nice meal and the people were nice. It was worth the wait. This experiential difference is often a main driver of gaslighting. Two people can, and often do, have very different experiences of the same day, whether it's a restaurant, a travel experience, a movie, a line in the store, how a day is spent. In a healthy relationship, we can acknowledge those differences. We can say to the other person, hey, I saw that you didn't like the meal, and ask them about it, even though you may have loved the food. In a narcissistic relationship, if they didn't like the meal, then you didn't like the meal. And if you push back and say, no, I actually loved my meal, they'll say, well, then that's because you have the palate of a third grader. Narcissistic and antagonistic people often go into their days with unrealistic expectations. And if all day their superiority and greatness are not acknowledged, then that's not a good day for them. And an example of that would be if they actually had to wait in a line, because that doesn't mean they're special, right? Or something not going exactly the way that they want, or a person maybe being rude to them, or a work day when they aren't having the success they wanted, or they're not the center of attention. Whatever it is, even if that long line they had to wait in at the post office was the only blip in the day, anything that punctures that delusion they have of their grandiose specialness will sink the entire day. In addition, the narcissistic person perceives threats everywhere, a suspiciousness that blocks their capacity to connect, and then throws some low empathy on top of that, and the pleasant joys of a brief conversation with a cashier or someone you meet, poof, is taken away. Spend enough time with a narcissistic person and their conviction about how terrible the world is, and you will find that you inadvertently get indoctrinated into their sour worldview. You don't have the luxury of fighting back. They will never hear your point of view. Personality matters. It matters a lot. The capacity of the agreeable people to draw more joy back from the world, and their lack of entitlement, their willingness to be kind to other people, means that agreeable people have an experience of the world that may not always be easy, but because of how they put themselves in the world, can result in a reciprocal series of interactions that are rewarding. The key to being able to hold on to your reality is to understand that they are having a different experience of the world, and their different experience doesn't render yours invalid, even though they say it does. Trust me, even under the cold, eclipsed shadow of their narcissism, your bad day is still always going to be better than their best day. Hope that helps, and thanks again.